Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, Episode 12, Kris and Veris. Today I'm here with Kris, and he's got a really interesting world, but first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of Dungeons & Dragons?
Outside of Dungeons and Dragons, I was born in Sonoma, California, a very small, nice part of the world. Grew up there and eventually made my way to Berkeley, where I went to school at UC Berkeley. Um, I have spent a lot of time hiking. I really enjoy mindfulness meditation. I've done a few silent retreats. Um, I've probably spent well over like 1,000 hours just sitting in silence. I like to do a
Cool.
lot of reading. Do a lot of fantasy reading. Name of the Wind, I would have to just give a quick shout out. I'm sure by now everyone has read it, just because of how popular it's become. But I still had a friend who hadn't read it yet, and I was dogging on him for a while to get to it. Um,
I think I remember that one. Is that the one with like a magic tower or something? Might be remembering the
No,
wrong thing.
that might be like the Dark Tower or something. No, that one's Patrick Rothfuss, which if you haven't read it, Isaac, I highly recommend. It is absolutely fantastic. It's some of the best writing in like fantasy novels that I've ever read. It's
Yeah, Patrick Rothfuss is on my list of my pandemic reading list that has
yeah.
been slowly chipped away at, and I can't really call it that anymore. But
The
still,
list never ends. I mean, for me, it's always continuous. I have so many books now that I've bought on Amazon and that are yet to be read, but still getting to them. Um, But other than that, I mostly just stay home, play video games. I just beat God of War Ragnarok, which was fantastic.
cool.
I'd still say I think Elden Ring deserved Game of the Year for the absurd amount of hours I dropped on that when it like first
I
came out.
I was a little bit shocked. I felt like Elden Ring was obviously more of a cultural phenomenon
hmm
than any other game that year. So
Did you
yeah,
play it?
I did not. I'm not a fan of the Dark Souls or much of the action RPG games at all.
Gotcha.
I think the only ones I played are the Star Wars ones, just because I love the setting so much.
hmm
But yeah, I get the appeal.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not even my favorite FromSoft game. My favorite is Bloodborne, which just has like some of the best world building.
Mhm.
And actually, my D&D game draws somewhat heavily from that one. Um, but yeah,
Cool.
both games were absolutely fantastic, and I spent a lot of time doing D&D as of late. I've been playing for quite a while, and one of my long-term campaigns that got moved online after the pandemic kind of started to fizzle out. I don't know if my DM just like didn't want to do it anymore, if he was just getting busy, but we had a game for about I think like 6 or 7 years, and technically it's still going. It's just we haven't played in a while. But when we stopped playing that, I was listening to a lot of Dimension 20 when I was moving from California to Austin, Texas, and I listened to like the entire first season of Dimension 20 in the car because I did some like wild road trip where I picked up a van in Las Vegas, drove back to Sonoma, California, which was 8 hours, and then
Hmm.
drove to Austin. And the vans you can only drop off where you picked them up, or else you pay like an enormous fee. And so I had to
Right.
drive back from Austin to Las Vegas. So I don't even know. I drove like 4,000 miles or something like that. Like
Yeah, that's a big
so
trip.
absurd amount of time. But I finished the entire Dimension 20 season one and fell in love with it. And then I was like, hey, this is what I want to do when I play D&D. So that inspired me largely to start running my game.
Yeah, I saw that you mentioned Dimension 20 in your intro survey, and I actually had to look that up because I hadn't heard of it. So it's
Oh,
a
what?
college humor D&D show.
Yeah, so yeah, it's done by College Humor. The guy who does it, Brendan Mulligan, has been playing for like a really long time. And he's just like one of the best like improv people that I've met, or that I've seen.
Mhm.
Uh, have you watched Critical Role or listened to Critical Role?
Well, this is my secret confession is that I actually don't like watching or listening to D&D shows that much. I can't get into it as a spectator.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
so I'm not super. into Critical Role. I've listened to it a little bit, but yeah, I kind of feel the same. It's kind of hard for me to get into that. But Dimension 20, it's like really like quick. It's like funny and also like tense at the same time. It just does a really good job at like uh bringing out the characters and like showing their development. Like that first season is probably still like one of my favorite D&Ds, and I only listen to it. I don't really watch it,
Mm.
because for some reason when I listen, I can picture it in my head better than when I'm actually watching it. I'm kind of the
Yeah,
same even when I play D&D. You know, I'm not always looking at other people. I'm like seeing things that are going on in my head. Um,
that makes sense to me. Yeah,
yeah,
and I have like the faster plays that I've seen, but like I've liked Harmon Quest and the Legend of Vox Machina like cartoon show.
yeah, yeah.
So those are faster paced and actually have visuals to look at. But yeah, I suppose as a podcast with a faster paced one, yeah, maybe I'd be into that. I should check out that then.
Yeah, one that's short, that's pretty fast paced actually, is one where Brennan from Dimension 20 is on Critical Role. It's called Exandria Unlimited Calamity, and it's only like 5 episodes. Um, and that one's super quick. It's like always going. And it borrows from the lore of Critical Role, which is interesting. And Brennan does a fantastic job, as always. But
All right,
yeah, it's
I
great.
wrote that one down to check out later.
Cool. But yeah, now I'm just hanging out in Austin, Texas, with my dog and my cat and my girlfriend, and I bartend for work, and hopefully starting a new remote job soon at Google doing legal assistant. I would love to be remote. I'm so ever since the pandemic and being in quarantine, I've just become more and more antisocial and wanting to just stay at home. So I'm really hoping that uh, I hear back from them and hopefully I can move to remote work.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's always nice to be comfortable, and remote work is definitely more comfortable than anything
Yeah,
else.
yeah, absolutely.
Also, I've seen that you've experienced the commute from Austin to California to Google headquarters. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, luckily they have one here too, but it's still pretty far. It's like 30 minutes. So I'm like, I don't wanna go to the office. Let me
yeah,
just,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
Sonoma is actually an interesting connection for me because I have a few friends there. I used to
Oh, no way.
visit there on weekends and stuff. So yeah, that's
In like
nice.
in the actual town of Sonoma?
Sebastopol for me,
Oh,
but
okay, yeah.
still close enough.
Yeah, that's close. Did they go to Sonoma State or?
No, this is actually when I was in middle school, with my family, and like we had like a D&D group that was like at home we played with on Wednesdays, and there was a different one on the weekends for when we were
Mhm.
visiting people in Sonoma,
Oh, nice.
Sebastopol, but still.
Yeah, yeah, that's a nice area. That's
Yeah,
really
I
cool.
love
So,
it.
are you from California then?
Yeah, I'm from the Bay. I'm
Oh, cool.
from Menlo Park, Palo Alto.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's a beautiful area.
Yeah, yeah, the
I
hills up there are
was
great.
I was just over there for New Year's actually. I had a friend who was having a party there.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
What brought you out to Austin? I think I missed that in the conversation.
Um, I actually just wanted to live somewhere new. I just kind of wanted to travel, and my girlfriend and I were split between here and Berlin, and she didn't want to move that far,
Hmm.
so we decided on Austin. Her
Yeah.
brothers had lived here for a few years, and they really liked it, and so we just like to live in new places or explore different parts of the world, so we thought it'd be a good fit. Um, Austin's all right, you know. I heard better things about it before I moved here, and I don't think I'd give the same recommendation as what people gave me. I have really bad allergies, and in the spring I can hardly breathe, and my face gets swollen. My
Oh,
my
that's hard to
eye gets
predict
swollen.
though.
Yeah, and I've never had allergies either. You know, California isn't gets pretty bad allergies. A lot of people do, but um, yeah, I'd never had allergies, and then when I came here, it's just air's poisonous. It's also nowhere near as like uh beautiful in terms of like environment and like landscape. Like
Mhm.
people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it's really outdoorsy," and I come here and it's like the trees are basically just big bushes, and you got dirt trails to hike on, and that's about it. The river's nice. The food is pretty good. The service is a little lacking, but Yeah, it's all right. I think Austin is a great place to visit. I wouldn't necessarily live here again.
Hmm. Yeah. How long have you lived there?
I've lived here. I moved in September of 2021, so like a year and a couple months.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad's had this experience with moving a couple times for allergies. Is that like initially it's nothing because you need to be exposed first to have the allergy,
hmm
and then it gets terrible, and then eventually, if it's not too bad, you get used to it and it goes away again.
I'm hoping that because my lease is up in May, and so I'm hoping that it doesn't come back as bad as it was before because yeah, it was just brutal, and I don't know how long it took before it actually hit me, from September to like I think like April or something, but it's like cedar or something that's like really bad, like
Hmm.
cedar fever. Um, what I'm really hoping is that now when I go to other places, I'm not susceptible to like allergies that I wasn't susceptible to before, and now I'm just like stuck with allergies my entire life. Like I was so happy with never having allergies, and now I just my
Well,
body's
I
betrayed
mean, you
me.
might find that you actually get allergies coming back to California, since you've been gone for so long.
I
So
know that's what I'm worried
yeah,
about.
I have this thing when I have an allergy to cats, but I have a bunch of cats and I'm acclimated to it at my home.
hmm
But whenever I go on a vacation and I come back, I'm allergic to my cats again, and I have to deal with like sneezing for a week.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's good that it's mild. Mine is real bad. I literally just my face gets like red and blotchy and my eye swells up. Like it's next level shit. I need to go to like the doctor to get some stuff again because I had
Yeah,
to get like an
yeah,
inhaler and stuff. Like it was crazy.
yeah. My sister's roommate in college, yeah, she just like when it was the pollen season, she just didn't go outside. It didn't.
Yeah. I mean, that's another benefit of being remote too. Hopefully, I'm just not gonna have to leave my house except to walk my dog.
Yeah, and for the traveling you were talking about, like when if your lease comes up and you just want to go to Berlin this year,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yeah,
it's gonna be a hard sell again for my girlfriend since I'm the one who mostly wants to do it. But we're thinking about Denver or maybe somewhere on the East Coast or maybe even back to California. I mean, it's such a beautiful place and it's it's hard to be away from like family and everything. Like
mhm.
it makes holidays so expensive having to like drive or fly back. Like I just drove back for the holidays because I brought my cat with me and we made the drive, and I picked up my friend who I actually played D&D with, my longtime friend in
Mhm.
Durango, Colorado, and so we ended up making like a 30-hour drive trip there, and then another 30-hour drive back. But it was,
That's impressive.
yeah, it was a good time. The 14-hour, I had two 14-hour days from Durango, or from Austin to Durango, and Durango to Austin, and I don't recommend those.
Yeah, that's another part of Texas there, the huge driving distances.
Yeah, and if anyone's listening to this and they haven't been to New Mexico and they don't know this, the police in New Mexico are hunting you, and there's such long roads that have nothing, and the speed limit's only like 70 miles an hour, and it's so easy to go like 80 or above. I got pulled over twice in New Mexico. I only got a ticket for one, but I got a ticket when I was driving back. I think for like 93 on a long road where no one was there, and I was super tired, and I didn't even realize that there was a cop coming at me. And somehow, I'm still not sure how this works, but he clocked my speed while he was driving toward me, and then flipped around and then pulled me over. Um, is that a possible? Do you know how that works? Because I thought speed is relative. I thought you can't. Yeah, I thought you have to be in a still point to measure speed.
Well, they might have one that like hooks into the car and can automatically do it, but
Uh
he would
huh.
know his speed. So if he clocks you at 150 and he sees himself going 65, then he's like,
Yeah.
okay, they're
Okay, that makes
going
sense.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a bummer.
If you like going 95, I would recommend Montana because the highways there do not have a speed limit.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I've driven in Germany before. I drove from Munich to Berlin on the Autobahn, which
Hmm.
doesn't have a speed limit either, and I was going like I rented a BMW there and I was going like 260 kilometers, which I think is like 130 or 140 or something like that. Just hauling ass like the entire way. It was incredibly fun.
It's 5 to 3 for the conversion, so I think that's 150.
Oh, okay. Yeah, even faster. Wow.
But yeah, very very fast.
Yeah, I only had one person pass me the entire time, and they were driving a nicer car than me.
Well, man, we should get back to D&D topics. So,
Yeah.
your world, what's what's the name of it?
The world is Veris, um, which actually has a meaning, um, but it is eluding me right now. What it means? I think it's a Latin word. I think it's Latin.
Yeah, Varus, the guy that I think that's one of the like generals that lost all of his armies in Germany.
Yeah, oh, I have so many notes. So I take most of my notes like on my phone. Um, I have, how many is it now? 3,571 notes. um, and luckily I have them very well sorted. And when I come up with things, I sort all there. So for this campaign, I have 161 notes, just
Hmm.
specific to this. Um, you know what I think it was? I think it was the middle of a word um, that I like put together. Like it was like a longer word, and then I took out just Varus and out of the longer word. But that's actually something that's super important to me, is like coming up with the name of stuff. Um, my degree in at Berkeley was rhetoric, which loosely translates to like the philosophy of language, kind of how language works, in a general sense. And something that I've just always loved in philosophy is just like language is meaning, how it's changed over its time, the effect it has on people, how people affect it,
Hmm.
and everything related.
All right. You spelled it a little bit different than the general guy. So Varus, the way you spell it, Veris, means spring.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you know like verdant, like that, like green and growing? I think it's the
Hmm.
same root.
Yeah, you know what I think I did? I think I took like, because what I'll often do is I will look up words in Greek or Latin,
Hmm.
and then I will take like a part of that.
I I definitely do that too. Um, Another thing I like to do for names is I'll like just put like literally what I want it to mean, and then I'll use like Google Translate into a random language.
Hmm. So like for example, the continent that they're currently on is Interminus, um, which terminus is a Latin word, and then the interminus means like, I think, finite or like boundary, um, and then interminus is like unbound, basically. And then the other continent where they're all from, um, which is the Connexus, was just like a connected version of the Nexus. But I generally try to make it so that things are kind of intertwined or connected. No one, no one ever really cares to like look it up, unless they're looking from like an outside perspective, and they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I make that connection." But my players, I love them to death, but a lot goes over their head.
Well, I think like the literal stuff that you're describing can go over their head, but the words when you're picking them still have like a feeling to them that is
Right.
conveyed with what you're doing. So in terminus, like because you still have like the termination and the in ending, even if they haven't commented on it to you like purposefully, it
Hmm.
still has a feeling to that word that's coming across.
Right.
And it's just like Connexus has, and the Varus like it being similar to how we think of like Gaia as like a growing word. Um, and that's why like when I was doing that, I told you about like the translation thing, where I take a word like the literal meaning of what I want to be and I translate it into a different language.
Hmm.
Often when you present someone with two different words in a different language, and then the two words as they would be translated, they can pick them correctly just based off of how the words sound.
Oh, cool.
Um, so I think like hard and soft are ones that usually people can pick out which is which just based off of hard usually having a hard consonant sound in it
Hmm.
and soft having a soft consonant, like an F.
Right. That's cool. I hadn't heard that before. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So there's your linguistics lesson of the day. Um, okay, so yeah, words. I love it. I love it. I did have a lot of questions about the words,
hmm
so yeah, it's good to get into that. Can you give me a physical description of your world?
Like the environmental makeup of it.
Well,
Is that what you mean?
in the survey you mentioned like two different continents, but yeah, also like yeah,
Oh,
what's the
yeah.
environmental makeup? Is it like one's a desert continent and
No, so it's pretty so when I started doing this, um I quickly realized I was going to get overwhelmed if I put in a lot of stuff and
Mhm.
if I tried to um make sense of everything and tried to flesh out everything. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I know? What do I think is interesting? And how can I simplify that? So the world that is really paid attention to, um, basically the two continents that are of main importance or that are like considered civilized, is America, which I make these on Incarnate, by the way. Fantastic software for making maps. Um, which is
Mhm.
America, which is Interminus, and the Connexus, which is basically Europe. And um, what happened about 1,000 years ago was everyone was moved off of Interminus and moved over to the Connexus, where they formed countries that were separated by species, as they now call them in 1D&D, or races if
Yes.
you prefer the fifth edition version. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, so they were separated as like kind of an explanation as to why people were warring. They were like, hey, elves have a different experience of life because they live 750 years and they get reincarnated from their souls, and humans who actually in this world they live to about 150 years. Humans have a very different experience because um, it's not for sure what's going to happen to their soul, and they live a lot not as long as elves as compared to dwarves and everyone else. So that was kind of like their explanation for moving everyone, keeping them separate. Um,
mhm.
as for all of the other places, there's about two other major continents which kind of make up some of the border races. So like the Tabaxis are there, and like maybe some of the more wild ones. Um,
Okay.
if someone wanted to like play a exotic race or something like that, that's um, where they would come from generally. Um, but yeah, the makeup generally like the environment is pretty similar to America. It's like if you look at the map, I literally took a did a drawing of it. It took forever on Incarnate, but it looks almost exactly like America, and then the Connexus looks very similar to Europe. And
Yeah.
so they have basically made that journey from the Connexus back to Interminus 1,000 years later, and everything is a lot different there. No one has lived on Interminus for 1,000 years, so everything is overgrown. A lot of things have been destroyed, and what I wanted to do when I was like making the place that I thought that they would play on, I was like, okay, I don't want to develop everything because that's going to take too much time, but I want it to be well thought out. So I was like, okay, what if I just make it so that everyone is moving over here at the same time? So like as they're figuring things out, so is everyone else. So everything's kind of in development, um,
Okay.
which has led to a great world so far. Imagine coming to America early on and being one of the early settlers, but not killing all the Native Americans. That's the one thing I took out. I was like, okay, I don't want any major uh, genocide, although there is a little genocide, but that was a long time ago. Um, and
Yep.
it was against the elves. Everyone, the elves have it well enough as it is. So,
Yeah, they're
uh,
stuck up, so they deserve it.
exactly. Um, but But yeah, so they're currently on Interminus. They've been there for about, I think, about 2 months now. And yeah, things are getting real. They're about 3 sessions till the end of the campaign, the first
Wow.
campaign. So I'm really hoping. It's been about a month since we've played, and I'm really hoping that we get to play soon because I really just want to wrap it up. I've had the story for so long, and I'm like, it's almost been a year, and I'm like, I can't wait till everything happens and they get to see the end of it. I just sent you the actual picture.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm. I'm seeing it now, and yes, that is very much a United States
That took
account.
incredibly long. If you look at it, it's an actual map. It's actually really close to what it actually looks like. The one thing I did forget to mention was the Chaos Wastes right there, which is basically just completely destroyed lands filled with smoke and stuff like that, which they're not going to get into probably this season. But the beginning of the world was populated with children of Lolth and Zahir.
Hmm.
Lolth, the goddess of the Drow, and Zahir, the god of snakes. And before everything was kind of the way it was now, um, in my world, the gods, the like upper plane gods weren't really concerned with populating worlds. It was more of some of the more evil gods that ended up populating them first. And so a lot of worlds actually have histories of some of the evil gods populating their stuff and populating the worlds, and then the upper plane gods choosing to populate worlds to actually build armies and to build followers. And so a lot of them are built on like the remnants. Like if you go to the Underdark, um, there are a lot of Drow in hiding, as well as they're Wanti, but in this world they're called Zekins.
Hmm.
And so a lot of this story actually has to do with Lolth as well as Zahir. Um, and they're not gonna. My goal. I hope they don't listen to this. Actually, I'm not gonna spoil it because I'm gonna tell them to listen to this. The goal is to at the end, you know, resolve some major issues. I guess that's all I'll say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's always a choice the GM has to make when they come on a podcast.
Yeah, I am very secretive with them. I have another friend who I play with who's much more open about what he wants to do and what he wants me to do, or like what he wants my story to be like. Um, but I am very secretive. I love the surprises, and I love
Well,
surprising them.
I don't know if this influences your decision, but this episode probably isn't going to go up for a few months because I've got a few others ahead of it for editing.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, what I'm planning is for campaign 3, which is
Oh, okay. Never
yeah,
mind. Yeah,
not gonna
I thought you
happen.
meant like end of campaign one. Okay,
No,
never mind.
no, yeah. End of campaign 1, they will be fighting the head of one of their churches. They actually know who their main opponent is. It is a woman who is vehemently against Lolth and is doing everything. She's basically turning people into Wanti to build an army to try to kill Lolth. And you know, they don't know what's going on, and they don't like people, especially their family members and friends, being turned into Wanti.
No.
So they are quite against her. However, she is quite out of their league, and they will soon have no option but to try to take her on. Um,
Well,
something.
let's back up a bit. I wanted to get to that a little bit later on.
Okay.
I'm seeing the inspiration from America and Europe right now, and
Yeah.
it's a tradition in JRPGs as well to basically just slap a map of the world down and modify it a little bit. So
Yep.
I'd say you're in good company there.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned like 1,000 years ago there was like this big event where everyone was taken from Interminus and put on Connexus.
Mhm.
why don't you go a little more about that event where there are already people on Connexus and they were just rearranged along with everyone as well?
Yeah, there were people on Connexus, but it wasn't as heavily populated.
Hmm.
So before the event, which is called the Binding, which happened like I think it's like 1,007 years ago, there were people on both, and they were given these creatures, basically by the gods, called consequencers. And what they they were gifts from the gods, and what they were for was to help all of the like upper plane um, children, like the elves and the dwarves, humans, all of them, um, defeat the children of Lolth and Zahir that were also occupying Veris. And when they eventually pushed them all underground, they still they lived in peace for a little bit after this war with like monsters, and then they were like, okay, well, how come one of us doesn't rule? And so there were six nations that had won the war, and then after that, one of them got kind of power hungry and was like, hey, I should just rule everyone. And
Of
so
course.
yeah, so that was actually the first um king of Interminus, King Emerson. Actually I wrote a family line um for it. Yeah, so this is James Emerson the Third lived in the year 60 pre-binding. Um he was the third king of Interminus, but he was the one to lead the victory against Lolth and the Zekin. And he actually, to win, did something a little dangerous. He made a promise with Lolth um, later on to win the war against the rest of the nations. Um, he traded.
So this
He
is the
was
same guy that like pushed her underground, also promised her something?
yeah. So um, after they were well, she wasn't pushed underground, but all of her children were,
Okay,
or
yeah,
a lot of her descendants. um and so in a way to get back, she made a deal with him, and they had a kid together. But what they also did, um Emerson's army was largely formed of um martial fighters, while a lot of the other armies, once they had been at war, were composed of elves, who were mostly wizards, spellcasters, and a large majority of the other army was spellcasters. The
yeah.
only advantage really that Emerson had was the consequencers, which there were 12 of them, um, and they had, I think, seven. They had seven, and the other group had five. And what the promise with Lolth did was she created. Do you know what a mythal is?
I saw that you wrote about that, so I had to look it up. It's like a super powerful like spell of some kind.
Yeah, so it's often a spell that multiple wizards will create in like a city to like make you be able to do magical things. So like there's some that could like make you fly, make you cast like sending. Often there's been a few in kind of like D&D lore where um they kind of like collapse and stuff like that. And what'll happen when they start to collapse is it'll create like wild magic zones. And I remember reading about that, and I was like, wow, that is so cool. And so what I did was I created, uh, or Lolth created, a mythal that encompassed the entire world to limit everyone to fifth level, basically, and magic couldn't be cast higher than third level, um, which gave Emerson and the consequencers, since he had the majority of them, uh, a huge advantage, and they ended up winning the war. And at that time, they wiped out quite a bit of elves, and moved everyone to the Connexus,
Mhm.
before they were able to like take out everyone, they some people started to notice, and they were like, "Hey, we're not going to move over there if you're going to just kill us all." So they didn't take out all the elves, but they took out quite a large bunch of them. Now, the main antagonist, actually, of the story is the daughter of one of the elves who died and was pretty young at the time that this happened, and she's been alive all this time because in the Chaos Wastes, she found um, an eye of the son of Zahir, which has basically granted her a longer life. And so her motivation is not only taking out King Emerson, but is also taking out Lolth.
Okay.
So I have this neat way of kind of right now of tying the lore backstory of like what I just told you, like the world backstory, into their world. Um, the elf Asarin, um,
This is the
Yenna,
one that wants revenge against Lolth and Emerson.
no, so that is Yenavandra.
Okay.
She is the daughter of like this elf named Alistar who started this like order basically called the Metrodana, which sought to seek truth and knowledge. And Asarin, who's a player character, is following that church, and
Okay.
Yenavandra is the head of the church. And he found a book which has the initials AS, which is meant to be believed as Alistar's, whatever he wrote his last name as Silverdra or something. Um, but is actually Yanavandra's. Her first name before she changed it was like Alavandra, and so he is reading about the events that happened 1,000 years ago and is starting to understand her motivation, even though he doesn't know that it's her. And what's gonna happen is they don't know where the mythal is. Everyone knows that this magic has been limited for a while, and they are about to discover um, where the magic is being limited,
Hmm.
and they're going to have a choice as to whether to um, restore the mythal or to destroy it, and to make everyone be able to be, whatever level they want. Um, and the way that they're able to restore it is basically wild magic is seeping out of it right now, and they have the wild magic feat basically within them, and they are able to give that up um, and stay. You know, they are seventh level right now because it's breaking and because it's not as limiting as it was before. But they'll have to restrict themselves to fifth level for the rest of the game. I would be really surprised if they did that. Although, part of me hopes they does. Part of me hopes they do because it's really unexpected. But or if they let the magic go, Yenavandra, who's their main enemy, who's been alive a lot longer, is instantly gonna have a uh, magic that she did not have access to before. Is gonna have
Hmm.
access to, and it's gonna be a much tougher fight.
Right.
Um, but I'm really looking forward. I love putting decisions um, to them to decide, how the world is going to end up. And I love not knowing too because it makes the story so much more fun when I'm like, okay, I have these decisions for them to make, and I'm gonna have to figure out what happens afterwards once they make those decisions.
Yeah, that's a really nice choice. It doesn't seem so clear what you would want to do that you could even possibly have like a inter-party conflict over how they resolve it.
Right. And I'm very curious because, on the one hand, so there's two political parties basically right now. There's the Equalists and there's the Arcanists, and they've had quite a bit of interaction with both, and they kind of exemplify that final decision. The Equalists basically believe in like, hey, it's better that everyone is generally equal because there's not as much power difference, there's not as much war, because things have been peaceful the past 1,000 years because the consequencers and the king who rules them, um, there's there's no question as to who would win in a fight. So there haven't been any major wars. And then there's the Arcanists who believe, you know, freedom of magic items should be allowed. We should be able to express ourselves. We should be able to dive into new curiosities. And it's like, there's merit to both of them. And it's really just going to be a matter of choice at the end, what you think is better. Is it the good of everyone, or is it, the good of you taking the power in your own hands and what you might be able to do with that? So
Right.
I'm really curious to hear the rationale and how everything's gonna end up.
So I've got a few questions there. So the consequences you said they're like some sort of force that was created by the higher plane gods, or are they like angels?
Yeah, I actually have. Okay, so I am insane. I've spent like $3,000 at this point of like art, like custom art that I've had of like people done of like the characters and
Wow.
like all types of stuff. Um, and I actually just got one done of the consequences, but the file is too big to send. Basically, what they are is they're a creation of two gods. One the um is the actual god of creation, Moradin, and then the other one is she was like a god of peace. Her name is eluding me, but
Alondra?
that might be it. I don't have it here written down. It's probably in my notes in my phone. But um the two of them created them to give to the mortals, basically. And what's really cool about them, um, the inspiration from them actually came from Mistborn.
Hmm.
Have you read that?
I have not.
So there's these really imposing creatures in Mistborn that basically seem unkillable, which is how the consequences are. They're the only things that aren't affected by the mythal. And so they're basically like level 20 creatures versus all of these uh, level 5 people.
Hmm.
And what's really cool about them is they don't have a head. It's just kind of like they're almost look like the body of like a armored warforged, and where their head is, they have this like floating orb that kind of just like morphs around. And when they are hunting someone, the orb shifts into the face of who they're hunting.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, and so very imposing, to see your own face uh beating you down as they go looking for you. But they are actually controlled by the king, who his crown has the ability to control them. He has several different attachments to it to be able to control each individual one. Um,
Okay.
because when they were first given out, there was basically like a remote for each one, and he has condensed them all into one crown where he can control them.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned it was called the binding. Makes it so everyone's restricted to fifth level, so that
Yep.
includes like martial classes and
Yeah.
magic classes. Okay.
Hmm.
How does that work for monsters? Like, a 20th level dragon? What happens there?
Yeah. So there, I actually haven't run any dragons. A lot of the things that I've been running have been pretty low level. Um, I've been thinking about what I was going to do. Um, if I was going to do dragons, I was thinking I was probably just going to put them um, either underground or up in like a high city or something like that.
Hmm.
But what I was thinking generally if I do run stronger monsters is that's their kind of innate ability. And for example, like if a high level fighter is pushing beyond their means, sometimes it's not like directly magic, but like they're like tapping into something that's just beyond the normal means. And so um whereas a dragon would like innately have fire breath, They
Okay.
wouldn't be able to cast like high level magic. I think some dragons can cast spells. I think.
It's a variant rule in the monster manual, so yeah.
Yeah, and so they would be limited in that aspect, but their like normal, a lot of their normal features would still be accessible.
Okay.
Hmm.
Another thing I was thinking about with the restricted to 5th level is that sounds very similar to the E6 rules that existed for 3rd edition. Do you know about those?
I don't.
Okay, so the idea, well, 3rd edition you had way more feats,
Hmm.
um, and people tend to not like high level play, which I don't know if you've DM'd high level play yet, but it's very similar in 5th edition where
Hmm.
it gets difficult to control your players because they can pretty
Yeah.
much do whatever they want.
Yep.
And it also means that it's hard to have like a slow progression of the story because people can teleport everywhere and heal up all in the same day and all of this stuff. So
Yeah.
to have it feel like a more grounded story, you keep level restricted to level 6.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
and I mean that's a great idea. That was largely like one of the reasons I did it because I was like, okay, why are they solving this major problem? Like, I've played in a few other games, and I'm like, okay, why are we saving the world? We're like level 6, and I'm like, how come they're going to us for this? Like, there's no one else. There's no level 20 people. So I thought that would be a good way to explain why they're solving this problem.
okay, yeah, yeah. That totally makes sense.
Hmm.
In E6, that additional part where like you're stuck at level 6, whereas you're almost like letting them fix that restriction.
Yeah,
um,
so by gaining more feats.
yeah, so you gain more feats. And in 5th edition, there's like the epic boons in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's
Yeah.
similar to that where you get access to like some special feats once you're level 6.
Oh, those are cool.
Um,
I love those. I'm gonna be giving those out at the end of the second campaign, if they do a certain thing,
mhm.
um, which they're gonna be having a choice there too at the second campaign. I love putting those in there. Those uh, really tough choices. In the second one, they're gonna have an incredibly tough one too, where they choose what's more important. Um, Once again, but
Yeah,
yeah,
cool.
they will be given boons depending on what choice they make.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things it has as an option for an epic boon is I think getting a feat or getting another ability score improvement because same thing.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a way to like keep them at a low level but still have improvement and advancement.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I so like actually one of the main reasons that I ran this was because one of my roommates in Berkeley had never played D&D,
mhm.
and I knew that he would love it, and so I was wanting him to play for so long. And so like he is like one of the main reasons I was like, okay, I need to run a game myself so that I can get him to play. And
Yeah,
he loves it now. Like he is like one of the most in character persons. Like everyone like loves how much he gets into character, and yeah, he's just absolutely fantastic. I can't get enough.
cool. Um, one more final thing about E6 is that it also had like a way to cast higher level spells by
Mhm.
taking a feat to learn the spell.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You might want to check out the rules for that if they end
Yeah,
up
I'll look that up.
not breaking the mythal. It's probably not going to be that relevant if they do.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, I do have a somewhat solution, and actually, they will probably have started the next game by then. They are going to be going to hell. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, they're going to be in Avernus. Um, in the second campaign because they will Varys is currently Asmodeus's vacation home because no one the gods don't really know that the planets exist because the mythal's there, and so Asmodeus randomly found it and was like, hey, I can go here and no one will bug me. And
Hmm.
they've actually run into him unknowingly, and after they destroy it, if they do, he's not going to be happy, and he's going to be like, hey, you owe me a debt now. And something that I've really loved about D&D lore and haven't been able to do a lot is cover the Blood War.
Hmm.
You know what that is?
That's the war between demons and devils that keeps them all busy enough that they don't kill everyone else.
Exactly. And so I was like, hey, what if I just did the beginning of that? Like, what if that just happened? And so uh, relatively just happened. It happened about a couple hundred years ago. Um, but I had one of my players die actually. Well, he's died twice now. Asar and the elf. Um, but the first time he died and then was brought back, he was in the Gray City, which is basically like purgatory, and there was a war going on, and he came back rather quickly because he got revivified. But he was kind of like, what just happened? And so in the next campaign, they are going to be dealing with a war that is going on in Hell, and they're going to be dealing with a war that is going on in their hometown, and they're going to have to kind of decide which is more important.
That is a tough choice.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be interesting because during the day they're going to be solving the problems at home, and at night they're going to be summoned by Asmodeus to solve some other problems down in Avernus. So
Oh,
I'm very
cool.
much looking forward to it.
How did the character get revived if there's no powerful magic?
Revivify, third level.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah,
That's low enough.
yeah.
Okay.
Though he did just die while the cleric was gone. He missed that game, and he did die. Um, I'm still deciding if they break the magic. That might be a factor into whether they break the mythal or not. Um, to bring him back because he is currently dead and would need a higher levels thing than revivify. Oh, the only thing that isn't limited besides the consequencer are magic items. So magic
Okay.
items, very rare and rare or above, do function normally. However, they're not illegal, but they are restricted, and to obtain them or to own them, you need permits that are either educational, military, or religious. And to get those aren't always easy. They have a couple at the moment to keep up with some of their items, but some of them they have to store in a bag of holding. Um, and what's a little bit more
It's like the
daunting.
government's legislation of marijuana in the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. Like keeping them in control because the king um, doesn't want someone to become too powerful to actually pose a threat. And so to
Right.
keep the peace, everyone is just kind of kept at the same power level. The consequences actually have a constant detect magic and detect thoughts, 30 feet radius going at all
Mm,
times. So like they are like the super police. You do not want to get rolled up on them by them.
right. Can is the king allowed to be a higher level?
He definitely has higher level magic items, but he is not allowed to. So the original king, King Emerson, James Emerson III,
Mm,
died a long time ago, 1,000 years ago.
right.
His descendant, actually, um, King Henry Emerson, was supposedly assassinated, and um, this is why everyone is now on Interminus because the King of Emerson died. For 1,000 years, the Emersons family line held in the Interminus without anyone living on it. And when he died, um, his children sold it to the King of Albion, which is like the free city of the Connexus. It's the only city where everyone of any race can live there in peace, and it's one of the cultural hubs, intellectual hubs, everything.
Hmm.
Um, the consequencers, and the land was sold to the King of Albion, who's actually a descendant of one of the older Emersons, was one of his sons. Um, was bought by the King of Albion, and then everyone who was a citizen of Albion was given a kind of like priority to move over to Interminus. And a lot of people didn't want to because it's this wild, unknown land. But after about 50 years, there was like rumors of new magic, and that sparked
Hmm.
a lot of interest in new people who were looking for adventure, looking for something new, looking for new innovation. And so a lot of the people who are over there right now are adventurers, are people who are innovators and looking for, new and exciting things.
Okay. Cool. You mentioned that Asmodeus was hiding from the gods. Wanted to go back to that.
Oh, yeah, just from time to time. So, like, right now, he's in the midst of the Blood War, and the Blood War has completely, the demons have, like, completely overrun the majority of the levels of Hell, and are
Hmm.
starting to get to, like, right now, the farthest point that they're at is the Grey City, which is a purgatory, right before they start, breaking into the material plane and then the upper planes. Um, but yeah, so he just has a lot on his plate, and he comes to Varys just to relax, for nothing else other than to just not be constantly barked at or told uh, what to do, and it's just his vacation home basically for a couple
Okay.
hours every week or so.
Well, my question there wasn't so much about him, but
Mhm.
what the mythal is like blocking other people from seeing him there. Does that prevent like other planar travel, or like does that make it so clerics can't get divine spells because they're blocked from interacting with their gods? Like how far does
Yeah,
that reach?
so there hasn't been communication with the gods in about same time as the binding,
Hmm.
but they do still get power from them up to fifth level. Um, there's just no communication from them whatsoever. The power of the belief in them is strong enough, but it's basically just not being communicated to the fullest extent. It's like coming almost as static to the gods, but
Hmm.
they're still, loosely aware that something is there. They just can't pinpoint it directly.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
Does that also affect planar travel or summoning or teleportation magic, anything like that that has some interaction with the planes?
Um, it would for people like that were high level. The only people that would be able to cast magic high enough, are people that would be on the same level as Lolth. So like any major god would be able to supersede that.
Mhm.
And that's why the consequences are able to still do that because they're like direct creations of the gods.
Right.
Um, but other than that, other than extreme or powerful divine magic, nothing else would be able to really teleport or do that kind of planar travel
Okay.
at the moment.
Okay. I had a few more questions about like the smaller parts of your world if you want to get into those.
Yeah.
A while back you mentioned like the segregated like racial countries. Is there
Hmm.
a reason you went with that? That I mean I kind of get that like it's neater and cleaner when you're building your world, but I was just curious if there was a
Yeah, part of it was like to me it makes almost like sense why um like okay, humans are all one race regardless of color. Elves and humans live life very differently. So, I get it in like the way that it might make sense that having different experiences of life might do things culturally, might make different decisions and stuff like that. But it also, nonetheless, however much sense it makes, it also will pull on people's emotions a little bit and be like, "Hey, I don't like that." And so part of why I did that was I want the status quo to be almost perfect. There's no war, everything's at peace, but everyone's living separately and there's a little oppression. You can't cast whatever magic you want, uh can't own certain magic items, um and so that's just a way to make it so that both sides have their pros but also have their cons.
okay. Yeah, I was thinking it sounded very similar to like early 1900s like racial nationalism kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's funny actually, one of the books that inspired me to write this, it's totally um has nothing to do with it. I think it has to do with history. Was on totalitarianism by Hannah Arendt, which mostly just covers like how Hitler came into rise through like multiple different avenues. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not even really sure at the moment what the direct um uh relation was, but I just remember. Oh, maybe it wasn't even that. Maybe it was another history class that I took, and I was just wanting to cover um, people moving from Europe to the U.S. and kind of just the state that it was in previously. I think
Okay.
that is what it was.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about like the broader parts of your world and the plot, I guess. Wanted to also get into like the different cultural aspects of your world. So it's not, I'm guessing, it's not uniform because you have like the segregated countries, obviously.
Yeah.
Are each of those like, elves live in the forest and dwarves live in the mountains kind of stuff, or is there any like subversion of the usual tropes that each of the races have?
There is a little bit. Let me see. So I play on Foundry. I don't know if you're familiar with the online platform.
I
Um,
am.
It is absolutely fantastic. Um, I wrote governments for each of them. So Albion is a constitutional monarchy. Humans are feudalism. Elves are an oligarchy. Dwarves are a plutocracy. Gnomes are a democracy. Halflings are socialists. Dragonborns have an autocracy. Goblins have a dictatorship. Orcs have a matriarchy. Goliaths are anarchists. And furbolgs are geronot I don't even know what that word means. But it probably means something. In the DM's handbook, there's like a list um, of different types of governments, and I remember going through and then wanting to pick them. But um, I would say most of them generally live in like similar type landscapes. The only ones that like live in the forest and aren't that civil. Oh, I'm aren't that developed, I'm just gonna use a different word now, are
Uh,
the furbolgs. They mostly live in the forest. The Goliaths also aren't as developed. They kind of live almost like monks, kind of. They live like up in the mountains. But the terrain is fairly similar for a lot of them. Elves live in cities. Um, Dwarves live in the mountains. Humans, gnomes, and halflings all kind of live in a similar environment. Um, Albion is a lot like England. It's kind of a small, compact, or it's big, but it's smaller compared to the rest of the continent.
gotcha.
It's like a small, dense city that just stretches on for quite a while. But other than that, there's nothing too extraordinary there. The only
Okay.
things that I really fleshed out were some of the major cities, and then yeah, just their some of their like exports because each one of them kind of trade with the other country for things that they might be better at making. Like the Dragonborns and the dwarves are great smiths and crafters, and the elves do a lot of writing and literature, and so they often trade with each other for different things.
Okay. You mentioned Albion a couple times. Why don't we talk about that city? Is that where the descendants of Emerson live, or is it?
Yeah, so that's where one of them um so in 1520 um after binding there was only a
So you
daughter.
said 1520? I thought
Oh,
we were only
sorry,
a
sorry.
thousand.
You're right. 520.
Okay.
Um there was a daughter of an Emerson who moved overseas and married Seth Morcynthia, and being a daughter of the Emersons, their son Jareth ended up founding Albion after being like, "Hey, everyone's all separate here. What if we had a place where we all got together?" And a lot of people were against it because they were like, "We were at peace for 500 years. Why would we want to spoil that?" Because to them, the rationale wasn't like, "Oh, I'm kicking all of you off, and I don't want you here anymore." because the mythal is on Interminus. The rationale was, hey, we've been fighting for so long because we're just different and we need to go be separate somewhere else.
Mhm.
So a lot of people were pushing against it. Like I'll be on the, oh, it's gonna fail. Like just leave it alone. It's fine. But for the last 500 years, it's become like one of the most successful and popular cities. There's still a lot of traditionalists who believe like, oh, we shouldn't um, we shouldn't mix and we should just stay within our cultures because everything's been going so well. But as always, there's people with different beliefs, and there's like, hey, I want to run into a Goliath, or I want to hang out with a halfling, even if I'm an elf. So it ended up becoming really popular, really successful over the last 500 years, and it's like one of the major cultural and economic hubs of the Nexus.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
So everyone just wants to get along.
Yeah, in that place.
What would you say is it like a melting pot? So there's a lot of different cultures that are present there, or is there a
Yeah,
unified culture?
no, it's a melting pot for sure.
Okay. And then you mentioned there was a somewhere on Interminus that everyone was getting on. Like it's only 2 months, so there's probably like only one or two or just a few colonies. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's about 5 major cities. I'll send you the I kind of did it in a style where the map is um blocked out. There's like smoke
Hmm.
covering a large part of where they are, and as they explore, it gets uncovered. Um,
Oh.
yeah, so adds a lot to the exploration. And they have only been to one major city and then a few small towns around it. There's about 3 other major cities that they just haven't been to because they've been dealing with things related to their backstory, things related to what's going on, and they just haven't really had the leisure to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna travel wherever I want. A month spent of their time was actually in downtime, um, because I put a lot of feats for them to learn from
Hmm.
the colleges that are there's a arcane college and an archaeology college in Jonestown, which is like the capital city of Interminus. And I spent a lot of time putting like classes in there for them to learn, but then I was like, when are they gonna have the time to actually complete all of it? So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna give them a month for them to be able to choose whether they want to study a feat or whether they want to do other stuff. And it was right after they finished the first arc of the campaign, and there wasn't a whole lot for them to do. They were kind of like in this standstill point because they knew who their enemy was, but they didn't have much of a choice to be able to act on them because they didn't know where their enemy was after they didn't capture him. And um they realized who the main enemy was Yenavandra,
Hmm.
and um they basically threatened their families if they were to act or do anything um overtly against her. And so um they had this month where they were kind of like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to spend time doing our own thing until we figure out, you know, what we can do to act against her. And then the second arc began, which kind of led them um, in somewhat in that direction, but also dealing with other problems that they were. Oh, here we go. Other problems that they also had to deal with, you know, with the city, politics, government, their roommate becoming mayor, all sorts of fun stuff.
That's cool.
I just sent you the image. So that's actually that's not the that's only a small part. You can see like a lot of Florida. It goes all the way down to Florida and then like part of Texas
Hmm.
where there's like the actual big map. But that's the small part that they've explored.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned like there's a government like that it's the capital city, so it has to be like there's a government.
hmm
How is that functional? I thought you said they'd only been there for like 2 months. Or
Um,
do you mean the
so the
players have
player,
only been
yeah,
there
the
for?
players have been there for 2 months. The people have been there for about a little over like 50 years. Um,
Okay.
yeah. Um, and this was like the first city that they settled in. Um, and for a long time, like people did not move there. Like it wasn't until the last 5 years that people really started to move there en masse, or like just more than before. Because the first 50 years, it was just dangerous to move there because it was so unknown, so unpaved. There was just nothing there, and so it took a long time. And the who was the mayor of Jonestown before they killed him um, was this was this guy named Saravok who did a lot in terms of, you know, wiping out a lot of the evils, but also wasn't that good of a person himself. Um,
Yeah. The magic card.
yeah, he's actually so. Um, I don't know if I shouldn't say this because it's like I can't say it on like Reddit or anything like that. So if you don't know, there's this great website where you can get a lot of stuff for free, and it has to do with tools, and that's all I'm gonna elaborate. But Foundry works really great with it, and you can import all of the creatures and everything. And so at the time, I was just dropping characters in, and it's so funny. This character wasn't even meant to be anyone, and I dropped the NPCs in after they first landed, and the first thing that they had to do was give this vote in Parliament, which was to decide on like whether was going to be magic items were going to be allowed or not. And after they did that, they went outside and then they met some of like the main NPCs. And this was like basically the part where they would kind of choose their own quest line. I have like 4 major quest lines that they could have went down, and depending on
Uh-huh.
who they gravitated to, they could have been like, "Oh yeah, I like you." Um, Funny thing, they didn't choose any of them. They ended up doing their like backstory quest line, which I was more than happy to oblige and do. But they during that time they talked to these 3 random people who I was like, okay, these are gonna be like some 3 evil, imposing looking people, and like they talked to them, and they were like afterwards saying like, oh, I hate those people, and then I was like, okay, like Saravok was one of the ones who I put out, and then it was a couple of the other ones, Czar, who's like the Phantom clone or something like that,
Hmm.
and then like and then like one other guy, Edwin Odessa, who are all from like the Forgotten Realms or who are from D&D module books. And then I was like, oh shit, I can't change their name now. So I was like, all right, I guess it's Saravok from whatever D&D Wizards of the Coast thing he's from. So
I've got Bigby in my campaign because I really
oh
liked all
yeah,
the Bigby's hand spells. So
yeah.
I had to come up with a wizard that invented the spells and was famous enough for using them, and then everyone kept calling the spells
Oh
Bigby's
nice,
instead of other stuff.
that's really cool. I the only thing that I've done for spells so far is I've done a few well, I guess not a few. I guess I've only done one so far. I mean, I've made one spell and then I modified another one. So fireball is like definitively better than lightning bolt in like most cases because you can hit like way more targets. It's hard to
Hmm.
get all your enemies, lined up in a line. So what I ended up doing was I made it so that lightning bolt targeted 3 different areas of like 5 feet or something like that. So you could hit at least, like 3 people. That way there was a choice between fireball and lightning strike is what I called it. Um, and so I tried to do that for a few things. I don't know if I made any other edits. Um, but just to kind of, give more versatility rather than just be like, oh yeah, this is obviously the best spell. God, I hate silvery barbs. I nerfed that a little bit. My the elf was using that quite a bit.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I think I only nerfed it really gently actually. To like I reduced the range from 60 feet to 30. But yeah, they are incredibly strong. It's a blade singer wizard and a vengeance paladin, a twilight cleric, a gunslinger fighter, and a divination wizard. which, I mean, I'm lucky, one, that I like to play really strong characters and that I like read lots of builds, and I've actually played every single class and subclass that they've played, so I know how their characters work. But it is so hard to balance combat sometimes,
Hmm.
because they are just
Well,
so
if a group
powerful.
that big, yeah, they're gonna wolf pack a lot of the things that you put up against them.
Yeah, and so a few things I've learned is, one, don't just make it one enemy, and if you do, give them legendary actions. And two, give them, if you do just do one person, give them more health because they're gonna need it. Yeah, they are very strong.
I was gonna say you also might want to bring in some environmental things that limit them.
Yeah, I like to do that. I like to make it so that it's not just one thing happening at once. Like they're having to usually decide between staying close or uh trying to make combat a little bit more dynamic, so it's not just like, oh, I swing and then that's it. We actually, where they killed the mayor, they did it on the moon, and they had to be careful
Cool.
about how far they moved. Actually, technically inside the moon, but uh, there was still less gravity and a few environmental hazards.
I'm thinking of doing one coming up where it's they're fighting and there's a bunch of ghosts in the area that are like trained, so they hold down like the left hand of everyone, so everyone can
Hmm.
only use like their right hands.
Oh, nice. That's a great idea. Have you run a an Umber Hulk before?
Uh, Maybe as a random encounter a long time ago. I don't think I've ever replaced one purposely.
They have a pretty cool ability. I think it's like a confusion ray or something like that, where like they kind of make the player like do something that they don't intend to. But they
Hmm.
also have something that's cool. They can burrow, and so I'm actually running this campaign twice. Um, I'm almost done with one, and I started the other one for another group who had been playing D&D with for a really long time, and because I was like, oh, I already have the world built, I don't have to prepare as much. Um, and so I ran it for them, and I did a thing where they would burrow down underneath and then like suck someone like underground. And while that was happening, the cavern that they were in was also uh, starting to crumble. And so they were like, do we fight this thing and get what we wanted to get, or do we just turn tail and run?
Yeah. Yeah.
They were able to defeat it, luckily, but it was still a good challenge.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I always like the environment always makes it a lot more interesting. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to bring stuff in, but it's a little more difficult in my campaign because there's less interior environments that they're interacting with. So it's often, how do I make another lightly forested plain be an interesting place to have the
Yeah,
combat?
yeah, I know what you mean. Something that I was gonna mention too before I forget
Yeah.
about it. I when the players first made their way to Interminus, I had been wanting to do this for a while because for me, I really like options. I like being able to do different things
Yeah.
as a player, and so when they first made their way to Interminus, part of getting the wild magic in them, um, they got to choose between I believe it's fighting initiate and magic initiate. So if they were casters and wanted to go more into melee and like pick up a little bit of melee stuff, they could do that. Or if they were melee and they wanted to pick up like a spell or a couple cantrips, they could do that. Or if they wanted to improve their build, they were able to do that, which was a fantastic option. Everyone loved it, and I think it worked really well just to give people, a little bit more options.
Never gonna say no to free stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned like 7 players. You must have a pretty big group.
So no, we have 5 players in one and 4 players in the other. It started as 4 players, and I had a fifth player join like halfway through. I think like session 12 or 13 is when
Hmm.
that player joined in. Um, and so yeah, so 5 in one and then 4 in the other.
And so you're running 2 groups through the same campaign, or are
Yep.
they interacting
Yeah.
with each other?
No, they're not interacting with each other. I'm still trying to figure out what the best way to do that is for my mental sanity, whether like it's congruent or whether it's just different universes. As of right now, I'm just gonna, until it's, until one of them does something that's world breaking, I'm just gonna keep them in the same world. Um, but what I've found is the players are interested in what's going on in the world, but they've been most interested in what's going on with their past and the characters that like the NPCs that they created and
Hmm.
what's going on with them. And so when I first introduced that stuff in the first campaign, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna give them a chance to like, you know, figure out or like rehash the things of their past and like kind of start to piece them together if they want to. And like that was what they just went full into. Um, and so I'm kind of leaning the same way for the first campaign, for the second campaign. Um, although the story is going to be vastly different because they all have different backstories. Um, and something that I had played in previous campaigns, largely my fault because before as I was a player, I would just be like, "Hey, this is my character. This is basically who they are," and that was it. I wouldn't write a backstory. One of my players gave me
Right.
like 5 pages. The other one gave me like 4 pages. Like I got
Wow.
so much from them, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm putting this all into the world." And I was like, I'm making it super detailed, and so so in my previous games that I've played in, it's been kind of like one character arc at a time,
Hmm.
or kind of like intermingling between them, but like mainly focusing on one. And in Dimension 20, that was really cool that I liked was like each person would get the spotlight, but the story was woven in with everyone. So it's like everyone would gain kind of the same motivation to do it because it involved all of them. And so that's what I did with the first story was I was like, hey, that's really cool. I have this like so Asarin basically gave me the big bad evil person. Um Asmodean was tied into that because his family and tribe was killed by uh the Zekin. Later on, the gunslinger's family was involved in it. His family got taken on Interminus, and then one of the characters, Ronan the Tabaxi, has this strange voice that's speaking to him that kind of sounds like a snake, and was found out to be his god, who he was praying to, who was a daughter of Zahir, who was trapped in the moon.
Oh.
Yeah, so and each time they would go to a place where they would find the Zekin, they would find these statues. Um, and each statue, when he would put his amulet up to it, it would reveal part of a teleportation circle. And by this point, the mythal is broken enough to the point where they can cast. I think it's 5th level magic is like the highest that can be cast as of right now. And when they finally got the final teleportation circle inscription, um, the wizard who has this connection basically with um, Alistar, the founder of the Metrodona, uh,
Right.
he was basically lent his power to be able to cast teleportation circle, and they made their way to the moon. And I was extremely happy that they figured out that could be done. I was like, uh, I was almost unsure, and he was like, I almost didn't do it. And I'm like, I'm so happy you did because I prepared you guys to go to the moon. So, um,
Yeah. I did a
so
moon adventure as well, but it was heavily lycanthrope themed.
oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Werewolves on the moon.
Hmm. Yep.
That is awesome.
Just always in werewolf form, because
Yeah,
why not?
yeah, yeah. So that was what I really tried to do was to like make it so that like everybody cared about the story. Like everyone had um a stake in the game as to what was happening so that everyone, was paying attention and cared as much about it as the next person.
Yeah,
And
it's
it
tough
worked
to
out well.
do to balance that and have it all work, so that's impressive.
Yeah, it's gone a lot better in the first one. It almost worked itself out because I was like, "Oh, this is the evil person. This is the relation to them. This they can do this." Like it really like knit itself almost. With the second one I'm having a little bit more difficulty um, because I only have 2 players that gave me an extensive background, and so I'm like still trying to figure out how to make the other 2 players care, and I don't want it to be like solely about the other 2 players, but maybe they can
Well,
care.
there's an element where you don't want to force it if it's not something that they want
Exactly,
as a person.
exactly, and that's what I'm trying to do is like to not make it. I'm not trying to push it. I'm trying to just offer it, and if they're like no, then I'm like okay, then I'm just gonna then it's just gonna be about them, and yeah, I guess that's what you guys want. So,
Yep. Mm.
but I mean they're loving it so far. I mean, for me, like one of the things that I love about D&D and like DMing is making the game immersive. And so like I mean, I'm not great at it, but I've been like practicing as I play is, like doing voices. Um I have, different songs on every single map that goes on, like different tracks. I have custom character tokens for everything. All of the maps are made on Incarnate. Like it really does feel immersive. Like once you're in the game and once everyone is like role playing, like it really feels like you're in there. So that's what I've been able to accomplish on both games, to the extent that I actually wanted, which feels great.
Cool. You mentioned a gunslinger. That's what like the critical role class, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So does your world have that level of technology where you have guns, or is he just using like crossbows or something?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of a newer innovation. So, right now, is kind of like the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Um, and um, this is kind of a bigger thing, but so they had a side quest once upon a time, a long time ago, session like 4, and they found a falling star, and the falling star warned them about or it was a small little orb, named Drone, and the falling star warned them about a intergalactic threat, basically, of some spore-like creatures that would be turned into teramites that would be formed in the stomachs of people, and once formed out of the people, um, they basically just have innate advanced technological knowledge. And so what they do is they benefit societies by offering them their knowledge and for advancing their technology to the limit, to like as far as possible. And then once that happens, the teramites take over. And that happened to this guy's planet. And he's basically sending drones out to basically be like, "Hey, you have a possible termite infestation," and um, they solve it. Luckily, actually, it's still kind of an issue. One of the reasons they killed the mayor is because the mayor was like, "Hey, that sounds awesome. I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm going to keep these dwarves." Um, but um, one of the player characters actually is from that planet and came here like 200 years ago, to do a similar thing, except this was before the Teramites had taken over and destroyed everyone, and he was going to spread them in a good way, thinking like, oh, they benefit societies. And so he only actually manages to spread it to um, one person, who ends up being the guy is Ludwig von Nock, who is the innovator, and his he doesn't get it, but his daughter and his wife get it, and how what the teramites actually are consequencers that have become autonomous. So
Oh, I
yeah,
thought they were really going into like the alien thing here.
no. So what happened was consequences, when given their own like remotes, basically get
Hmm.
to just act freely, and they were like, "Hey, we're kind of like slaves to everyone. What if we like weren't?" And so they started to create like their own like basically way to reproduce. And once they did that, they started to like spread. And so now the guy who is the biggest innovator, um, has his daughter became a consequencer, and is like this small miniature one, and is basically giving him knowledge, and he keeps her in this portable hole, and gets all his information from her. They do not know this yet, and they will hopefully figure it out because it's important to one of their backgrounds. Actually, it's important to two of them because one of the main characters. When we first started playing, I was like, "Hey guys, play whatever you want. I don't care if you want to play a sentient sword. Do whatever. D&D is a game about creativity. Let your creativity go wild." But he wanted to play
Right.
Gunslinger, and so his family was basically the biggest Phoenix doll. Doll Guns was the Borderlands reference. Shout out. Doll Guns was kind of like Renaissance era pistols, like shitty one-shot load ones, and Ludwig van Nock came around and just revolutionized it. It's like Western pistols and rifles. It's the Winchester rifle versus whatever those crappy guns that they fought in the early American Revolutionary War.
Muskets
Yeah,
versus
muskets,
like
exactly.
side-loading rifle barrels.
Exactly. And so they were quickly put out of business, and like basically Phoenix, one of his like story plot points is like my family is a part of this failing business. My father's sick and I need to find a way to cure him. And the only thing he cares about is this business, and I need to somehow bring it out of the rubble. And he has gotten kind of close with this guy, Ludwig, who has been doing all these technological advances.
Phoenix is one of your players?
Yes, he is the gunslinger.
Okay.
And so he is trying to, and actually has learned how to create one of these pistols. And not only that, how to like imbue runes into pistols to be able to make them silent. Basically, you inscribe a silence rune onto it, or a misty step, or invisibility, and is hoping to make his own way, or somehow bring the his family business back. But yeah, that's the overall Ludwig von Nock. His daughter, who he couldn't kill because was still attached to her, turned into a consequencer and is now gaining technological secrets and also potentially endangering the entire world by keeping her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I understand it, you have technological guns, not magical guns.
Right. They're like mechanically or evolved or technologically evolved. It's technology, it's not magic. There's magic
Okay.
imbued in them if they,
Get the
have,
silence rune and that
exactly,
stuff.
if they get runes inscribed, but they work off of technology.
Okay, cool,
Mm-hmm.
cool. And you've got the gunslinger rules to support that.
Yeah.
All right, neat.
Yeah. It's cool. A lot of this stuff I mean, some of it I did design beforehand, but a lot of the stuff I designed, and then as we were playing, I was like, hey, this fits really well with this. And it kind of just came together in a way where it makes things connected in a way that makes sense, and connects it to the point where like people are like, oh, I know this, and I know this, and it's like they get to kind of solve it along the way, which is so fun for me, and it's so fun for me when they get to finally make those realizations. I think the hardest part about being a DM isn't all the preparation and stuff, but it's just holding on to your story and all the surprises and being like, oh, I can't wait till you get to see this, because it takes a lot of patience, I think.
Yeah, it does sound like your players are very integrated into the world with the character ideas that they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in your survey, you said you're working on a campaign setting book for this. That was about a month ago, and you said you were 2 to 3 months from completion. How's that going?
Yeah, it's going good. So I started it when I was just writing recaps. Since it was the first campaign for like 2 of the players, I was like, it would be really cool to be able to like look back and be like, hey, this is what happened each session. Because I don't have that for like my first campaign. I only like have loose memories of like what happened. But I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I had like a detailed copy of everything that happened. And so by the time we got to like session 11 or 12 or something like that. I had like 20,000 words written from
Ooh.
session recaps. Yeah. And I was like, shit, I should probably do something with this. So I decided, I was like, okay, well, I could make a book. Um, and I was like, okay, what if I made a book and then also made a campaign setting? So if they in the future wanted to, run it for, I don't know, their kids, their friends, or whoever, or if someone else just wanted to play in the world, they could do that too. Because this setting isn't like a follow this recipe, but it's more like here are some things that you could add and work with to kind of integrate into some of the ideas that you have.
Mhm.
Um, and something that I haven't seen, I don't even know if it's been done before, was a campaign book where you also had a written copy of what happened when someone played in that campaign. And I was like, that sounds really cool because like the majority of where I get my inspiration for a lot of things is like reading other books or, watching um Dimension 20 or something. So
Right.
I was like, this would be great as a source of inspiration, and maybe people would also just want to read it, because it's a cool story for the most part. And so now I'm about, I think, like 45,000 words, and hopefully 3 sessions away from being done. I actually, let me see. Let's see right here. I think I have it pulled up. Yeah, so I can actually show you a little bit right here of what is done so far.
Okay. Yeah.
So here is the this is the front cover. Um this is the snake god they found in the moon. This is the former mayor, and so I've got, I think, a good majority of their player pages done. So this is Phoenix. Um, I kind of blended it in Photoshop and added a background,
Uh-huh.
added a little intro about him, and then added his stat block and everything. And I've done that for, I think, most of them now. I still need to write some of their intros, but I have a good majority of their
Yeah, this is
pictures
really
done.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really trying to make it, like look legit. So like if someone were to pick it up, they'd be like, oh, like I could play this as like a story. And then I started putting in some of the writing and everything. I still have to go through and kind of edit the beginning, and luckily I've done a lot of the editing as I've kind of gone. And this is only like the first, I think, like 5 sessions or something like that. I'm not sure if I marked it. I think this is about 30 pages long or something like that. Yeah, up to session 5. So I'm looking probably about 100 to 200 pages ish.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's going well so far. It's
Yeah, that's
just
very neat.
it's just time consuming, and it's hard because uh I mean, they have no idea that I'm doing this. Only one of them
Hmm.
does, my best friend Rowan, who's a Asar and the elf, who um funny enough I accidentally killed. But uh yeah, I think it's gonna be really cool when I print out the hard copies and send them to them, and then they're like, hey, I have this cool hard copy of what I spent so much time on.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to have a memory of the campaign. I think
Yeah.
that's really neat. And
Yeah.
a good use of all that art that you've got commissioned.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's tough because I love getting the art done so much and I love supporting the artists. It's just so expensive. Um I'm hoping, this is my hope, is that um I need to first so when you get art done, you pay the fee, but you also have to buy a commercial fee if you want to like sell it. And
Mm.
so if I wanted to like sell this book for any amount of money, I'd have to then pay, like an extra 10% on all of the art that I've got commissioned. But what I would like to do is, if people end up liking it or buying enough to like it, is at least make back enough money to be able to do it again for a second one.
Right.
Because I was pretty lucky in like during the pandemic and stuff like that. Since 2018, I got into cryptocurrency and ended up making like a bunch of money. But since then, uh, it's been down bad, and I was not financially well off as I was like a year ago. So I'm like, oh shit, I spent like $3,000 on this, and now I've lost like $200,000. I'm like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. But
Right.
maybe the market will bounce back. I'm pretty relaxed, and I have a good amount of patience. So I'm like, I'm just hoping.
Yep. Yep. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Drive-Thru RPG has a really good way to self-publish for that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, them and DM's Guild. So I can publish on them under them, certain licenses. I'm hoping before. Have you been following the like OGL thing? I still don't really know like a ton about it, but I've been following it like loosely.
Yeah, a little bit. And I haven't really been worried about that much for like producing your own content. I don't think they're really going to care about like individual producers like you or
Hmm.
me. And like they already have a deal worked out with Drive-Thru RPG and DM's Guild. Like those are like Wizards sponsored productions of
Okay, cool.
D&D content. So I don't think there's going to be a witch hunt for people there.
Well, that's relieving because I was like, I'm about to make this thing, and then as soon as I do, it's illegal to do so, and I'm gonna have to be selling it on the streets like a bum.
Yeah, yeah. The change only matters for like large companies,
Uh
and
huh.
the issue is that 20% royalty is on revenue, not profit, which is the real problem.
Gotcha.
Um,
Oh,
so
that's
if
kind
you
of weird.
yeah, if you do a 20% royalty on revenue, which is typical for how royalties are done, but it means that once you get to that $750,000 amount, you might be losing money on every sale you make past that amount because now you have to hand over 20% to Wizards when only 10% is your profit.
Hmm.
So it really is going to kill large competitors in that context. But if it's enforced and if it stands up in court, which is well iffy for stuff that's pre one D&D.
Yeah.
Uh, but for people like you and me, now Wizards isn't going to care that you're selling a setting book unless it becomes vastly popular, in which case, whoa, woo, success, and then
Yeah.
you can deal with that later.
Yeah, and following the Reddit memes, they're gonna claim as their own. This is mine.
Yes, yes. I
Um,
feel like those aspects of it. I mean, you're doing the same thing to them. You're using Lolth in your campaign, so why
yeah,
can't they do the same thing back, right?
for sure. Yeah.
Um,
Um, which I only ever created this as a way for my players to remember. I mean, it would be cool if I could just make enough money back so I could do it again. But I mean, even if one person, random person, I mean, hey, you might read it. Who knows? I'll send you a free copy, free PDF.
oh, that's nice.
But
Yeah, not a hard copy. I know how expensive those are for small runs.
yeah, oh god, I still am dreading having to figure out that. But yeah,
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 honestly, the cheapest way might be just putting it on Drive-Thru RPG and then just buying it through that.
yeah, yeah. I'm hoping that I can find some publishing house here that just will work with me to print some small. I only need to print like 6 books, so
Right.
hopefully it goes well. But I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry the listeners didn't get to see all the stuff in the book, but it does look very nice.
Yeah, well, maybe in the future or something we could post a link or something to copy it to, or maybe like a free code or something to go check it out.
Yeah, yeah. If you wanna do something like that, yeah, we can set that up later on. But
Yeah.
yeah, at least there's the Discord channel to share a
Oh
few
yeah,
like
absolutely, good
stills
idea.
from it if you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about while we're here?
I think I covered quite a bit. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I know I talked quite a bit. Once I get into it, it's kind of hard to stop. I'm just really
No, it was definitely a lot of
passionate
fun.
about it. So, um,
Okay.
yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Be happy to come on again maybe in the future when everything's done and maybe some things have progressed and maybe catch up
Yeah,
and see how things are going.
yeah, that'd definitely be cool.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, did you have any DMing advice you wanted to send out to the universe?
Ooh. Advice. Okay. One shots are incredibly difficult. Because it is hard to tie up a nice, neat, succinct story in 3 to 5 hours. I've seen more half shots than I have one shots because they were planned to be one shots, which I have run and also which other people have run. So if you're planning on doing a one shot, I would say don't do anything more than 2 combats. Uh, one as like a little introductory one, and then maybe like a bigger one at the end. Uh, Puzzles are great, exploration is great, but try not to do more than 2 combat because combat takes forever. Um, Other than that, something that I love about D&D and that I never understand why other people don't like other DMs don't like allow certain things um is I love creativity and I love being able to like make things work in interesting ways or like adapt things. And I've never really understood why, if something could be changed just for flavor or, barely mechanically, those why those changes can't be made. So
Yeah, I'm the
I
same way about that.
yeah, so I would say it's a game about creativity. Let your creativity rule and it's about having fun. It's not always. I mean, the rules are important, but sometimes it's a game about having fun. So have fun out there.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Chris. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Isaac.
I always give people a chance to ask any questions after the podcast if they feel like it.
Um, no, I don't think so. I guess we only talked about me. I guess I'm kind of curious. How long are you DMing at the moment?
Yeah. My campaign is closing in on the end as well.
Oh, nice.
I don't know exact how many sessions, but probably like 3 more adventures worth. It's been like 4 years at this point for the one we're doing right now.
Oh, wow. It's this whole one campaign is 4 years.
Yeah, it's like the third or fourth campaign I've done in this campaign
Oh,
world.
gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my last campaign was split into sort of two halves where I wanted to have two different parties that were run by the same players
Mm-hmm.
that would eventually meet and interact and try and like take on the villains together.
Mm-hmm.
Where one of them was a high level party and one of them was a low level party. The low level party ended up like growing away from that goal, so it no longer made sense for them to be part of it, and the players were also really enjoying the high level party anyways, so we ended up finishing the campaign with just the high level party.
Hmm.
Well, the low level party ended up wanting to go. One of them was a couple of them were orcs or half orcs, wanted to go to like where the orcs live and unite the orc tribes and get them into like being a proper nation that could interact with the rest of the world. So they're doing that now.
Wow, I hope that in 4 years, I will hopefully be at the same spot. I'm curious. How is scheduling for you? What do you do for scheduling? Do you hit up everyone individually? Do you message them on Discord and have them react, or do you have them figured out?
I have a Discord server set up for our group,
Yep.
and there's a couple different channels on the Discord server. So let me take a look at it now. So we have one that's for tracking story events. So like that's where we'd post like a session recap, shorter than the ones that you're doing. But We have a channel for describing different cultural things or different cultural questions about the world. So like what food do they eat here? Is it appropriate to bow to this person? That kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool.
There's a different channel for discussing character builds. There's a different channel for sharing memes. There's a different channel for just talking about like our lives. There's a different channel for posting like the loot that they got from monsters and then deciding how they're going to split it up between the different characters.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing session recaps. I also record my sessions. There's a different channel where I post like recordings, and there's also a channel for scheduling, which
Gotcha.
is what I was leading up to and saving for last. So at the end of every session, there's a quick like, okay, when does it make sense to do another session? And then I'll put up okay, we'll do it on Tuesday the 31st, and everyone will then, you can react to a message on Discord. I'll put up a check mark and an X mark, and then everyone else just has to click that reaction to add the same reaction they have.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to come, they'll click the check. If they're not going to come, they'll click the X. And if they're unsure, then they'll add an additional question mark.
Gotcha.
We've also picked a day that works pretty well for everyone's schedules, which is every other Tuesday.
Gotcha. So you guys are playing like twice a month?
Yeah, and only for about 3 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's about how long I play.
Yeah, they're shorter sessions than what we used to do, but now that we're adults with families and other responsibility nonsense or late
I know, right?
bartending jobs.
It sucks getting old.
Yeah, so because of that, having something that's shorter but more consistent, and like everyone tries to block out that time usually.
Yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't work always like for holidays, and like Valentine's Day is coming up for when one of our sessions is going to be, and that one's like I've already canceled it in my mind, even though we haven't scheduled it yet.
Yeah, I was just gone for 3 weeks, and it's been a month since we played, and I'm like, oh my god, like, and then it didn't work out this week. I was like, we need to get back to it. I'm like, we need to finish this game.
Yeah, I get the itch when I haven't played in a while too.
Yeah. But yeah, so what I do is I text each one of them individually because I thought that would, work better because I'm like reaching out to each one of them. And then once I know their schedule, I have to Tetris everything together. And I gotta say, if anything's gonna stop me from ever playing D&D, it's gonna be scheduling because it just makes me hate it so much. Like I'm having to figure it out, and then like one person's like, "Oh, actually, I can't do that time," or if all the times work for 4 people, and then the fifth person's like, "Oh, I can't do that time," I'm like, "Why is it like this? Why is this happening to me?"
I mean, sometimes you just have to go with the majority. So I've got
Also,
6 players.
yeah, I've done that.
One
But
of
then,
them just almost never shows up, and it's
yeah,
like there isn't a day that would work better for him. He's just got too many other commitments. So it's
yeah,
just he no longer has like a regular. There's always like some excuse we have to come up for his character. So usually he's not on an adventure with him.
right.
And then if he does show up, we'll just be like, oh, okay, I guess Korjak was here the whole time. So yeah, there's Korjak. Now he's with everyone else.
Yeah, I don't mind doing that either. I'm like, it's a game about imagination. Use your imagination. Like, but it's at the point right now where like each person is intertwined and things are gonna get tied up for them. Like, I need everyone to be there. The last session was the last session that they could have not been there, but these last three, like literally everyone needs to be there. And actually, for a while, like we had a couple weeks last year where we played like 3 times a week, and it was phenomenal. I was so happy. Ever since we added my other friend, the fifth person, it's been way irregular, and like I'm in this tough position right now where I'm like, I want to almost say like, hey, you can't be a part of the full-time group because like you're making it so the full-time group can't play, but I also like don't want to hurt his feelings, so I'm like not really sure what to do.
Well, I mean, the other person in my group, it's like understanding, like, when he's here, he gets to play, but we're not gonna try to accommodate his schedule just because it's not possible.
Right.
What we did for the final session of my last campaign, like 6 years ago, I guess it is now, is we tried to schedule it further out, like 2 months out,
Hmm.
where we'd have a whole weekend to finish it.
Yeah, that's
And
smart.
had it be more like a, like a camping trip or an event or something like that,
Oh,
where
that's a
like,
great
you're
idea.
getting together with all your friends and actually finishing the campaign. Um, so we're kind of spread out over the country at this point, so we didn't do it in person, but we set aside a weekend and we all got online for basically from Friday night through to Sunday afternoon.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. I might even try that because the last two sessions are probably going to be a bit longer. Like we only played 3 hours. The second campaign that I'm running, they like to play for like a longer time, so we play for like 5 hours every time. But
Yeah.
um, we used to play for so long. Like when I first started playing D&D and when it was in person, we would play for like 7 or 8 hours and like
hmm
almost accomplished nothing, but had so much fun just messing with NPCs and doing nothing.
Oh man, I was reading through one of my old session recaps and I was just like, how the fuck did we get this much done in a single session? Oh, that's right. That was like an 8-hour session, of course.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to say the other thing that we sometimes do in our sessions is if there's something that comes up that's relevant to a player that's not there, we won't just stop the session. We'll keep going. And then when that player comes back for like the next session that they're there for, we'll do a flashback and say, okay, so here's what happened. How do you react? And then we can get back in that moment and include everyone else as well.
Yeah, I like doing that too, actually. I'm gonna have to do that next session because the cleric who was gone actually got put in jail um um for casting a spell. As of right now, the King of Albion is on Interminus and has basically outlawed all magic and all magic items. And they killed the mayor on the moon and no one knows that he's dead except for them. And the end of the mayor race came up and the one of the main political figures is a changeling, and they know it. And when Saravok won and didn't show up, the changeling left the room and turned into Saravok, and then came back into the room to claim victory. And the cleric cast Moonbeam on him, and he got reverted, and he got sentenced to jail because of that, and that's why he was gone in game last session. But
Right.
yeah, we're gonna do a flashback as to what's going on while he's in jail. Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
All right. Well, yeah, that's my take on getting scheduling to work is, yeah, the player that can't show up, you might have to just accept that they're not
yeah,
a regular and they can have a phantom character that's there when they're there and not there when they're not, or they can take over an NPC.
hmm,
Um, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend actually trying to accommodate their schedule if they,
yeah,
if someone wants to find time, they'll find time.
right,
Um, and yeah, for actually, you really do want to have everyone there for the final session, then
yeah,
you just need to plan it further out and have it be something that's more like instead of a weekly session, more like a weekend fun get together thing.
yeah. And we've been lucky. I mean, most of us are still fairly young, like mid 20s, and so like the only thing that really prevents us is like jobs. Like I'm a bartender, so like sometimes I'll be working like late at night,
Yeah.
and hopefully, if I start this new job, I'm gonna be working remote from like 7 to like 3 or like 5, 9 to 5. So I'm
Mm.
I'm really hoping that this works out and I don't have to be working those late hours anymore because I mean D&D is like pretty much the only thing that I'm like super passionate about at the moment and keeping me from thinking about applying to law school. Like I'm just like just have fun for a little bit longer before I have to
Oh,
uh
man, but if you go to law school, then you can be a bartender that passes the bar.
yeah. That's a good one. I'm gonna use that for
Eh,
now. Yeah, we'll
that's not
see.
mine. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I think maybe I'll try the Discord thing. I'm just worried about doing that because I mean one of my fears is like I could also just put it in a group text message, and just be like, hey, like the message if it works for you. But I'm just concerned that like, you know, they won't respond or like because like already it's kind of a hassle to get them to respond. Sometimes I have to text them twice, and it's weird
Yeah.
because you know you might think like, oh, then they might not be that interested, but like every time I talk to they like love it, and they're just bad at responding because they're still kind of young, and so they're a little bit irresponsible. But
Yeah, I mean you're always gonna have a bit of that. That's true.
yeah,
I do have another group for Magic that uses a group text, and I will say it's a lot worse than the Discord thing.
yeah,
And the other advantage of the Discord thing is that you put the message up at the end of
the
your
session.
ongoing like the session, so people
Mhm.
can
Yeah,
respond
see it
right
right then.
away. And yeah, there's a few people that weren't there, but those are the people that don't show up as often, so you don't try to schedule around them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, usually I check in every Sunday because I'm like, because that's when a lot of people have their schedule for next week, and so they'll know
Yeah.
like when's free and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it is a bit easier for me because everyone has a 9 to 5, well,
hmm
or at least a regular scheduled shift, so there isn't as much, variability in when people are available.
yeah, yeah, we had two people that were working like serving or bartending for a while, and even still somehow we managed to get quite a few done. I mean, I've had like in total I think 19 or so like canon sessions, and then we had like side quests and stuff like that for like when
Hmm.
not everyone was there, and I think there was like 7 of those, so I think we've done like 26 sessions within like from January, February, March, April. I think we started in April, so from April to now we've run like 26 ish sessions, so pretty good
Yeah,
I think for the most part.
yeah. April, yeah, yeah, it's about as many as that's more than I've run.
Yeah. Um, I'm just hoping to also finish strong. Next campaign, I don't give a fuck. I think I'm just gonna do put it on Discord, React. If you guys want to play, it's up to you. I mean, I would love to continue the story, but like, just because I put so much time and money into this one, I'm like, I just need to finish this one. Please, just let me finish this one.
Okay. And just a note, since people often forget this, if someone doesn't respond to your text, you're
Uh-huh.
allowed to call them.
Yeah, I actually had to do that to one of my players because he actually had something going on with his family. He like no call no
Uh,
showed, which was like super unlike him. And
yeah.
I was like, I honestly thought he was dead. I was like so worried. I like texted him multiple times, called him multiple times, and just didn't get a reply. And
Hmm.
then he was like, "Oh, I had something going on with my family. It was like important." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just glad you're alive because like I for sure thought you were dead, and I was tripping
Yeah,
hard."
yeah, that's always, stuff like that's gonna happen.
Yeah. Luckily, it wasn't too uh, important of a time. We were able to go without him. But yeah, I think next campaign I'm gonna try to not make it uh, as important for every single person to be there. Basically, if the majority of people are there, then I'm like, oh fuck it, we're playing. But you know, it's also hard because you're like you want to include everyone and you
Yeah,
want it
yeah,
to be important to everyone. It's tough. It's tough being a DM.
yeah. That's like kicking out one of your friends, but
Yeah.
you can still do other stuff with them, just like
Yeah.
not as tightly scheduled.
And I DM or he's the DM for another game that I play in too, so like I would just feel bad being like, oh yeah, sorry dude, I couldn't get you in this week, but here I am.
Yeah.
But whatever. It's funny, we actually met on a Discord here in uh so for Berkeley there's like Discords that are specific, and
Hmm.
so we met in person like after we'd been playing for months, but yeah, we met online and then started playing that way. It was just like him and like 2 friends, and they were just looking for like one more person, and
No, that's cool.
yeah, it ended up working out. It's not always easy finding people online to play D&D with.
Yeah, there is a lot of failure with that, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm glad it worked out. It's
yeah.
great.